Hi, welcome back to the channel, and what we're going to be doing right now is upgrading the Longstrike. So what we're going to be doing is we're going to be giving it a direct plunger full-length conversion. So what I have here is my custom 3D printed pusher and a plunger tube block. Other parts that will be needed is we'll need a new plunger tube, which can be sourced from a Retaliator, or you can use the worker one, a new catch, and a new spring and spring seat. Now for these parts you can use a cheaper version. I'll be getting to that in a second. So first up, we're going to need a few different tools. Mark where you're going to cut if you need to use if you're trying to go the cheap route. A pin to remove the pusher. 2 screwdrivers for disassembly, and a hammer to tap out the pin and also to pry off the bolt handle. Oh, and a cutting tool. You can use a hacksaw. I like using my Dremel because it's nice and quick and easy. So opening up the shell, what we're going to be doing is we're going to be taking out the reverse plunger system, the pusher. We might reuse the catch if we want to use Retaliator internals, which is one of the options. We're going to save the spring seat, and we're going to be reusing the bolt sled and possibly cutting it for the Retaliator for using a Retaliator catch. All these here are just a bunch of locks. These are not necessary. All this is going to be staying. None of that needs to be removed. This is the mag release. Do not mess with that. And this is the trigger. Don't mess with that either. You can remove the jam door if you want. It helps for clearing jams easier. So, let's throw it to the side. Next, what we're going to need to be doing is we are going to have to remove this pusher. So what you're going to have to do, take this pin, and then you're going to tap out the pin from this side. Taking it from this side will make your life harder, as this has a little knurling on it, right there. And the knurling will make it really hard to push through. So pushing through from this side is much easier. See? If it gets stuck, you might want to add pliers to the list. The only thing you will need to do with the catch is maybe remove this. This is a lock that holds the bolt sled in the forward position when it is primed. It's not necessary to remove it, but it will help you it will help you if you have issues with the blaster locking up. So if you want to go with doing worker upgrade parts like the worker catch, and there's a spring seat. I don't have it out here with me. We're just going to pretend it exists. This is the spring seat, so that way if you don't want to use some crazy PVC method, you can just put this inside of here and it will hold your spring in place really easily. So just put the spring seat. This front lip goes towards the front there, and it will lock right into place. The other option for a spring seat is just using some PVC with duct tape to hold it in place. I don't know if I'm going to show that because it's kind of messy. Back to the catches. You can use this is the Retaliator catch. What we're going to be doing is we're basically going to be holding it in place in the blaster like this. So you have these 2 guides. It doesn't matter how long these are. They can be short or they can be longer. That's not a big deal. If you're going to be using one of the worker catches, these might work, but this surface has always given me issues with catching, so it may or may not work. Right? So now we're going to be taking the new pusher. We're going to line it up here and push the pin through on this side, keeping the knurling there so that way we can stay consistent. Actually, this is the nicer one. So what we're going to do now is we're going to take the new 3D printed pusher. We're going to put O-rings on it. They are the 16 by 1.5 metric. Put 2 of those on there, and if you want to make sure that it is the correct size, This is a Retaliator plunger tube. You want to make sure that it has a bit of a snug fit. That will kind of drag, but it will also move around nice and freely. If it's too tight or it's fighting to go in, the O-rings are too big. You're going to want different ones. Putting that aside, we will now line this up here. Take the pin and then make sure the knurling is on the left side yet again when we reassemble. And we're going to just tap it through. That will hold. So what we're going to do is, if we have the worker parts, this will be a stand-in for the worker plunger tube. I don't have extras right now. You're going to take your plunger tube block, and make sure that these two sloped faces are towards the front of the blaster. You fit that over top of the plunger tube's front neck. Fit your plunger tube into the pusher. Drop in your new assembly. And this is important. You want to make sure the plunger tube block is behind this ribbing here. Right here. It will be resting against that. That is what will keep your plunger tube in place. And this is the point where we will take this imaginary spring seat that will go here and hold your spring in place. Put that there, put the spring in along with the new catch. This right here drops into place. Sometimes. The spring will pop out when you're trying to assemble it. You can push it down when you're clamshelling it back together. And you'll put your spring in, not this. You'll want a Retaliator size spring. Anything from a 5 kilogram to 7 or maybe even a 12 will work. I'd recommend a 5. You're just trying to get elite or slightly better performance. Now, if you're trying to go for a higher spring load, it is important that this bolt sled will actually crash with the catch. So what you will have to do is you will have to actually ground down these corners so that way it runs smoothly. So we're going to take this back out. If you want to go higher spring loads, we're just going to round down these corners. You can then reassemble the blaster. Now, if we're going the route where we're actually using Retaliator parts, you will need to do something else for the catch. You will actually need to use a Retaliator catch. It's not that hard. You're just going to want to be taking the bolt. You're just going to take the original catch, and what you'll be doing here is you'll simply be cutting out this section on both sides. What this will be used for is spacers to make sure that the smaller Retaliator catch will stay in place. So we're going to take this catch, we're going to disregard this for now. So what we're going to do is we're going to take these small segments that we just cut from the original Longstrike catch. We're just going to be putting these in these gaps. Preferably sideways if you're lazy like me and you just want them to stay in place. Alright, now that we've done that for both sides for this, we're going to need to modify the bolt sled so that way it can fit through a Retaliator catch. The Longstrike bolt sled will be going inside the catch. That doesn't happen here. But if you look at a proper Longstrike catch, it slides inside. So we're just going to be creating that effect here by cutting this little back section where this hole is, and we're just going to make it flat with the lock walls. Same rule applies again if we're having issues with it getting stuck. We're going to want to make sure that these edges here are rounded off. So that should make putting the bolt sled through the catch much easier. And if you want higher spring loads, it won't snag on these surfaces anymore. Alright, so now that is done, we will clean this up a little bit. What you will be doing at this point is you want to apply lubricant to the O-rings, to the inside of the plunger tube's throat, and in here if you can. The worker one, you can take it apart just fine. This can be a pain in the neck to pull off, so I'm not going to bother with that. But you want to get that O-ring lubricated in here as much as possible in order to make it all function. This will fire just fine without it, but it's better for your blaster to have everything lubricated. I usually use silicone grease, which is commonplace for rubber O-rings. If your O-rings are not rubber, if they're a silicone-based O-ring, do not use silicone lube. You want to use something like a lithium grease instead. Right? Now we have these in place. We have our Retaliator catch. We have our spring seat. And where did our spring still here? You want to make sure this spring here is further back. It can go sideways and that might cause catching issues. If that's an issue you're having, just make sure that your spring is in place for the catch. Alright, and there you have it. It is in place. That's all that was needed to be cut there for your Retaliator catch. And just goes back. And just make sure that things do move around as they're supposed to. Springs can be annoying at times. Things will like to pop up. That's why you just got to make sure your springs are in place. If you're still having issues, just check on springs. So we're going to reassemble. Alright, so after some finicking around, the blaster is together. Now you just want to make sure that it fires. So these bolt handles aren't the greatest, but on a low power spring, a stock spring, you will definitely catch a 5 kilogram probably as well, and it won't pop off. Now we have this in place. Have our oops. This is why I hate the Retaliator catches. If you're having that issue there, it's likely that the spacers are pushed back a little too far, or you might want to just turn them 90 degrees, and that might do the trick. Gluing them will keep them in place. Maybe they're too short. This is why I don't like doing Retaliator catches. I just like using the actual worker metal catch because they're a lot less finicky and require less playing around with. But if you're having issues where it's kind of slamming forward again, you will have to mess around with the Retaliator catch to get it to work again. And also, do not slam the mag in place when the bolt sled is forward. These are 3D printed parts. They are fragile. They can break if you slam the mag into place. Like that. It won't break right away, but it will break over time. So, just be mindful of that. And there you go. It functions and fires. Everything, as with modding, everything will have some messing around with and some tinkering you will have to do if something doesn't work quite right. I've done a lot of these. Some of them work great. Some of them can be a little bit finicky. This one right here has some broken internal walls because of the sonic blaster, so it does not prime on this side very well. That's also probably related to that thing I mentioned about the bolt sled, so keep that in mind. But with a little bit of tinkering, you can get an 80 to 100 FPS full-length Longstrike without too much of an issue. Alright? I know it's probably not the greatest video in the world, but that's why I'm going to leave off because I am dying of a heat stroke right now. Alright,